Welcome to Beyond the Message, the weekly podcast where we take the teaching at Christ Community Chapel and bring it into your week. Each week, I sit down with friends and with colleagues, and we laugh usually a little bit. We reflect, and we think about what it looks like to take what we're learning and live it out in our lives. If you didn't get to hear the sermon yet, that's okay. Drop down into the description. You can find a link to the sermon. Check it out, listen to it, and then jump back over here for our conversation. I'd just like to note this is our first week back after a bit of a hiatus.
We're back, baby.
We're back. We are back.
Season
It's good to be back. So, and man, we're back actually a week early because a week from now we start our 10-week sermon series, which is we will be following through. But this week we talked about our big initiative and vision this year of Every Minute Matters. So we wanted to kind of jump in and be able to take some time to talk about that. So to kick things off, thinking about every moment and how every moment matters. If you were given 1 minute in any store, the store of your choice, and you could grab everything that you could grab in that 1 minute was yours, what store would you take that minute in?
My first thought was Apple Store, and then I was like, why would jewelry store? And then
See, not everybody can say jewelry store.
Okay, so are you thinking because you're going to resell this stuff?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Maximum value to ability to hold is what I'm looking at with jewelry store. So, and then I will sell it.
Actually, and at a jewelry
Question
store,
defeated.
everything.
See, I was almost going to
Next.
say, you have to choose a store of something that you like, not just
Yeah,
monetary.
Who says I don't like jewelry?
I didn't think you'd be able to think that quickly on your feet, Jamie.
that's actually smart. I went a totally different direction. I said Target because I know that store.
You
I know
it
where
back and forth.
everything is.
That's
A
true.
couple people who work there have said hello to me by name in the past.
Is that a compliment or is that a
I
little
don't
bit of a
know.
wake-up call?
Yeah, it could be
I think
both.
you should be proud of
But
that.
that's a pretty spread out store.
I know.
So the territory you could.
But I do think if I was
You were
strategic and
focused.
planned well and sprinted, I could do a lot of damage in a minute. And the variety of things that are there.
Okay,
I
love
so
it.
I
love
could
it.
grab a TV
Yeah, you
and a
could get
comforter and some groceries.
I wish I was wealthy
Some
enough
AirPods.
to say bet and say whatever you do. Like I actually want to see it happen.
Okay.
but
Well,
I
do you
don't.
remember that? Like, wasn't there a game show where it was like supermarket?
Yes, it's
and
a
you had-
supermarket.
Yeah.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, Brooks, do you have anything?
I would only be able to grab 2 items because they're larger items, but my friend sent me an email or forwarded an email a couple days ago. There's a new bicycle from a brand called Colnago, a road bike. They're $23,000 a piece.
Holy
Granted,
cow.
this is not like
Wow,
no
one
electric bike. This is pretty much like the Porsche Ferrari of road
I'm
bicycles.
sorry, but
I
how
would
could
grab
a bike
2 of those
at
in a
any
minute.
point
Be
be worth
$23,000.
$23,000?
I don't know, but if I had a minute, that's what I'd be doing right
Okay.
there.
Okay.
I was going to do like car dealership. I thought,
Yeah.
could that work?
What can
But
you...
you could drive out
Went
one.
Carry
to
the
like a
car
Porsche
out.
party.
Right.
Well, I could just
can't-
sign the
Rope,
paperwork in the
rope
minute.
pull,
You
and then-
cannot do it in a minute. There's no
I don't know.
way.
Well, anyways, that was good. Okay, good stuff. We know you like biking and Target, and Jamie and I like
jewelry. Jamie next
Love
week's gonna come in.
jewelry.
with
high
some
value.
Yeah.
High value. Okay.
Okay.
Well, every minute matters. We're going to jump into that. Pastor Zach taught this week, and he taught from Colossians 4 and then from Ephesians 5 and had 3 main points. It was a really great message. I think we'll have a lot to talk about. His first point was about kingdoms and then subway stops and then expectations, and kind of following the line of thought. First of all, with kingdoms is that we all have them. The kingdom is composed of a gospel and that good news and then followers. So we'll unpack that a little bit more. And then subway stops was just an analogy that Pastor Zach used from his own experience, where we kind of realize that we are all on a subway heading somewhere, heading in a bad direction far from God, and that in his grace and in God's mercy, he will at times that subway will come to a stop and invite us into his mercy and grace. And so where we've seen that and experienced that in our lives. And then lastly, expectations. And I just love this and the reality that I don't think any of us can outgive, can outserve, can have more passion than God does for people knowing him and his kingdom coming here on earth. So that's kind of the recap of what we're looking at for the teaching. And so just to jump in, is there a key takeaway, something that stood out to you that we can start talking about?
Yeah, I just immediately was just thinking about, hey, you can't opt out of the mission of God if you've placed your faith and trust in Jesus Christ. I think sometimes there's almost, we create this imaginary gap between my faith in Jesus and the action of what it looks like to follow him. And really there's, I was thinking of 2 Corinthians 5 when it's talking about if you've been reconciled by what Christ has done, made right in relationship with God, then it says you are an ambassador of that. Like that is just the reality, your identity and your action, who you are, what you do. So just even as Zach's talking about, as a church, the things that God is doing here, if you're part of this church, if you're a follower of Jesus, you're in the game. You have to. There's no kind of faith in Christ where you're allowed to be on the sidelines. If you're part of Christ, you're part of his body, and you ought to be caring about his body.
Yeah. Zach talked about the football team and saying every year there's a group of guys they're part of the team. They're in the picture. They're wearing the uniforms. But they really don't experience
the game.
Yeah.
And maybe at the end of the season, they're like, I didn't have a great season. And his line from the sermon was, well, you didn't actually play. I think there's a line or quote that has stuck with me for a long time, that when people say no to Jesus, they are rejecting not the real Jesus, but a caricature of Jesus, like, a picture that they have in their mind, because no one can see Jesus clearly as he really is, I think, fully understand that and, reject that. But I also think that when people walk away from Jesus, what they are doing is, I think they're walking away from an incomplete view of what it means to follow him. And so a little like what Brooks was saying, what Zach was saying in his sermon, is I think some people, they live on the sidelines. They experience this life on the sidelines, maybe for a period of time, for a few years, and they're like, oh, this is kind of mediocre. Like I don't know if this is really the best and fullest life. And then they say, I'm just going to walk away. Right. I'm out. And I think that they're walking away from a caricature or an incomplete view of what it means to follow Jesus. So that was my takeaway.
Right. And I think part of that is we don't actually believe that God will give us more than anything we could ask or imagine. So it really makes me think of Ephesians 5:20, or 3:20, sorry, that says, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to the power that is at work within us. And it just made me think like, hey, there is not, like, whether or not we choose to get in the game or not, like, God is always going to do more than we can ever think through. So I really was like, get in the game, because you're going to miss out. You're going to miss out.
I love that you talked about just the power. I was reading this week about how powerful the prayer of a righteous man is powerful, and just going, do I actually live in that truth and embrace the fact that, like, no, God, because I don't want to think. I think in this effort of, like, I don't want to think too much of myself, but it's nothing about me. It's all about God and his righteousness and who he is, and that he has put this power inside of us as Christians. So yeah, I think it really just hit me towards the end where he was talking about that just we won't ever be more passionate about reaching lost people than God is. And just realizing, like, man, that should create such an urgency within me. Hey, thinking about every minute matters. But truly to go like, man, if I am not living with a sense of urgency because of what it really means to not know Jesus, man, that should just be so motivating to us and cause us to get in the game and all of those kinds of things. Yeah. So that's great.
Yeah.
I love the metaphor of the subway stop. I just thought it would be worth putting out there if there are any examples that you can think of when God did that for you, or maybe so clearly in the life of someone that you know closely, where the subway stopped, you were heading in one direction, and that door opened, and God's mercy and grace were really extended in a real way that was evident.
I mean, I just think back to when I was in high school and first started following Jesus. Like, I was the person heading one direction, thought I had everything figured out in my life. God was no part of that. And had a person just continue to model a life with power, you know what we were talking about, like model a different way of living that just caused me to ask why. And I think in many ways, like, that was the first thing, like in a sense, like the train stopped and I'm like, wait a minute, like there's something different here. And then as I saw that was Jesus, his name was Jeff, and Jeff said, like, Jesus is at the center of my life. And I remember being like, I don't understand everything about Jesus, but like if you say that he's at the center of your life, like I'll give this a shot. Like I'm interested. So that was just like my life's headed this way. I had these plans of like where I was going to go to college, what my life was going to be about. Zero of that was in alignment with God's design for how I should live. And it was like, and everything changed at that point. So
Yeah. That's great. Yeah.
I think for me, I thought about it a little differently. I think for me, the idea of the subway stop, like I can get really caught up in being a mom and raising my kids and doing that and almost feeling like my successes are manifested through the successes of my kids. And I almost create in myself an identity that's connected there and not to who God is. And there was a moment where we experienced something really difficult with one of our kids. And it really brought me to my knees because it was this thing of going, okay, either this is my fault.
Yeah.
I've caused this really hard thing. Is this become kind of like my gospel? Like, is this what I decide or measure how important or how significant my life is? And really that very difficult, traumatic thing really brought me to my knees. And I remember God, through his Holy Spirit, really telling me like, hey, Sarah, what do you believe about me? And what do you believe about yourself? And it was that moment where I think it was like, hey, you either believe that you're my daughter and your identity is based in that, or you don't. So you need to get off this train that's going this way and turn around towards me.
Yeah.
So that was just something that was really significant.
I love both those
life.
examples
Yeah.
because, I think you can see it in, maybe at the beginning of your testimony where you see God's invitation. But I think all along the way, we can find ourselves as Christians heading down in a direction where we're still moving away from God than where we should. And he
it's like
draws us
macro and micro. It's like,
Yeah.
there's a big picture level. And then, but each of us in every area of our life,
Absolutely.
there's a little mini micro train.
Yeah.
And in some areas of my life, maybe I'm moving in the direction I've said yes to Jesus. I trust you. I'm going to give this part of my life to you. And then there's some places where I'm like, I'm actually going to ride my own train in this area. And so, absolutely.
Well, I love the Pastor Zach also talked about just kind of the kingdoms. And man, this was a powerful analogy to me. And he talked first about the Barnes and Noble magazine aisle.
Pour one out, he said. At least Thursday night.
He did on Thursday. He did. But really, we're kind of identifying that the gospel and what a kingdom is made up of is the good news, the gospel, and then and followers, right? And we see that happen. If you look at a magazine aisle, you can identify with the things that you resonate with. You start to listen to the influencers when it comes to social media, the things that are populating. I know my Instagram every day, all day long, start to become so focused in one area that we can realize like, okay, we all are believing a gospel. And there's the gospel of Jesus Christ. And then there's all these other things that are also taking aim at us or we are taking aim at. So as you thought about that analogy, were there just different areas that resonated with you, convicted you, challenged you?
That was, to your point, the sense of what a powerful starting point in conversation that can be, even with non-Christians. It's just the reminder that we are all being, I don't even know if this is a word, we're all being gospeled 24/7. I saw this crazy stat talking about like the average person in a big city sees like 5,000 ads a day.
Oh my goodness.
A day?
From their phone, from a bus station, from a subway, whatever it may be, right? And this idea that the unique and the only gospel that does not require you to do something, to earn something, to achieve something is the gospel of Jesus Christ. Like the playbook is completely flipped. And that's one thing for me. I think, you're listening to a podcast beyond the message of a church. So most people would probably say, I aspire to follow Christ and I want that to be the gospel I follow. But for me, sometimes I just get distracted and numbed by all of the other options around. And that's why I think it's just so important to consider when, the New Testament talks so frequently about standing firm, fixing your eyes on Jesus. This sense of if you are not looking totally and in total devotion to Jesus, if you're distracted by other ways of living life, of finding fullness, you're going to be missing out because only the gospel is where Jesus himself gives his life for you. It's just a complete kind of reverse of every other gospel we hear about today.
I mean, honestly, it made me think about what fills my Instagram feed.
Yeah,
Because
no,
if I'm
that's
real about it,
valid.
I mean,
Yeah.
I could list out quite a few things. I'll list out a couple, but I mean, a ton of just health, fitness stuff, right? So I'm into that. I love that. But the reality that, this analogy made me think about was the amount of conversations, the amount of time spent, the amount of other people that I dialogue with that are friends where we're talking in and around those things or about different products or whatever it might be, and comparison to Jesus and in comparison to that gospel and how does it know to take aim at social media, know to take aim at me in those areas?
They hear you talking about
I mean,
it.
I get stuff about
The
Jesus on my
microphone is always
Instagram feed
on.
too. I'm not gonna, but
Yeah.
going, man, it was a powerful reminder of we are all believing things. I become a follower of different things, different hobbies, whatever it might be. And how do I need to reorient different things in my life, right?
Yeah.
So
I really thought, okay, go.
No, I insist.
Okay. I know that the Holy Spirit gave this to me, but I kept thinking about this idea of stewardship. So I was like, okay, what does that mean? And I looked up the definition, and it's the careful and responsible management of something that has been entrusted to one's care. So I think for a lot of us, we have been entrusted with the physical body we have. We have been entrusted with maybe the finances we've been given. We have been entrusted with our kids, with our marriage. But what happens is instead of us being careful and responsible with the management of that, we have allowed those things to become the center of it all, right? And it's a scary word, but I think we're actually being discipled by those things. And so I think what we have to do is there needs to be a reorientation of going, hey, these things aren't bad. My physical health isn't bad. The money that God has given me is not bad. My kids are not bad. But it's that idea of the idol, right? Like something has become way more important to you than who God is, or has become more beautiful than who God is. So I just think it's something that we have to be able to identify, but also conversation we should probably have pretty regularly, if I'm being honest.
Yeah.
Paul will say, like, you've traded, and you've begun to worship the created thing instead of the creator.
Yep.
And so I think just wrapping that up, I'm like, I think our algorithms are probably one of the clearest litmus tests.
That's right.
Of the things that we put our hope into, like what our functional gospel is. Because I think most of us would probably say, yeah, Jesus, I believe in that gospel. But like functionally, when the rubber really hits the road, like what am I actually putting my hope and my trust into?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
That's good. So I want to talk about Every Minute Matters for a little bit. So this has been a vision that we rolled out at the beginning of the year. For us as a church, it looks like, we are sensing this urgency to create every opportunity we possibly can to be intentional about reaching the next generation. So that means there's physical things we're planning to do around our building, out on our property, creating space in all sorts of ways, especially for kids, a preschool, lots of that. Again, I was connecting this into, remembering when Zach said that we are never going to be more passionate than God is about reaching lost people. And just to dialogue for a minute around that and what that looks like for each of us, or just at least a couple of us, to step into that truth. What does it look like for us personally as we are leading different ministry areas, as we think about Every Minute Matters just being rolled out here at this church and projects starting to happen, which is super exciting. So just unpack that for, what do you think?
I just think it boils down like take a next step. So if you are someone who's regularly attending, but you're not a member, I would say
Become a member.
Become a member.
Yeah.
If you're a member and you're here, but you aren't serving, serve. Or if you're not giving, give. I don't think it has to be this like, whoa, but I do think participate in what God is doing here. And there's lots of ways you can do that.
Take a step into the game.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. That's what I would say.
Can I just speak a little bit to evangelism? We talk about this in membership class. So if you haven't gone to that, definitely take that step. But I also think as you're living out in our own lives, what it looks like to help reach lost people, reach people that don't know Jesus. We've had something here we often call like a +3. And really, it's just thinking about spaces you're in where non-Christians are and being intentional it feels like so normal, like it just should be what we do. But to be intentional about thinking about like, man, this is a space where I can engage with non-Christians and tell them my story, build relationships. And because sometimes it can be overwhelming to be like, wait, how do I share Jesus with someone? But it can be just a simple, different shift of a mindset and how you look at the spaces you're already in with non-Christians. And then by all means as well, like step into the life of this church, invite them into the life of this church, bring them here where the gospel can be made super clear, if even you're just not quite comfortable with some of that. But
yeah, I think sometimes it can be so almost disarming to feel like, man, how do I help be the light? And how do I help be part of God seeking and saving the lost?
So important.
But to your point, it's, man, do you know how many people, even for all of us, because, we get a front row seat to what God's doing at the church, how many people start coming to our church because they say, man, it was such a friendly place when I showed up.
Yeah.
There was a cup of coffee for me. Like people were so kind. Even just the simple things of intentional kindness, right? Intentional decision of ordinary faithfulness to hold the door open for someone, to start serving at the church and pouring a cup of coffee. Seems like it's so minor perhaps, but no, like that is
Big
part
deal.
of someone's experience to hear about the gospel of Jesus Christ. There's no kind of small role in the church because of God's plan of what he's doing is so big.
Mm-hmm.
And specifically, just thinking of the heartbeat for kids and the next generation, like we've been inviting some friends of ours to come to church for a couple of years. They've dabbled, they've come, and then they haven't, but they've been coming pretty consistently here for the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And
great.
there's a partnership because, we've been pursuing them and invited them. They've got 4 kids. I don't think that they come to this church or continue coming to this church if Sarah wasn't leading an incredible kids ministry.
Right.
And I think the heartbeat is behind Every Minute Matters is like, how do we make this as easy as possible? How do we make this space as accessible as possible for people so that everyone in our church can jump off the sideline and into the game and bring people to a place that they're going to want to be at. And so, love that. And I'm very thankful. So I'll just take a moment to say thank you for doing a great job with our kids ministry.
That is the
But I think that's the heart of Every Minute Matters.
It is,
to create more and more of those opportunities through turf fields and playgrounds. And
we'll do work on our end to try and make these spaces super inviting, super friendly, and obviously Sarah and her team.
We do need you.
We do need you. Well, and
that is we want to partner with our church community. Like that's like kind of just, I feel like we keep saying the same thing over and over again, but like, get in the game. Don't miss out. Don't miss out on what God is doing and be part of it. Because just even like Zach said, like when you see those construction vehicles and you've been part of it, you can say to your kids like, hey, this is we're part of this. And so even when you're in the classroom or you're on the soccer field or pouring that cup of coffee, you can be like, I'm part of what God's doing here, And so that's really cool.
Typically, we always end with a challenge, but we kind of talked about this right before. And really, I mean, Pastor Zach gave a great challenge. And so just to be clear on that was, hey, invite people, right? So take that step to invite someone, figure out ways to build those relationships. If you don't, any of us would be happy to talk to you more about that. Give. And we're not apologetic about that. And I love what Pastor Zach said in that, because it's like, hey, it's not as if like God doesn't need your money. He is clearly going to provide for his plans, for his purposes, but there is something about investing yourself and something that God does when you begin to give in your own heart that grows you into a place and grows you in your generosity, which, one of the things we often say is it's been said that the purse strings are like the last step of discipleship, loosening those purse strings and going, that reality is being generous is something that Jesus talks about over and over again.
Something just real quick, and I realize I'm interrupting, but I was like, it was powerful and convicting when Zach said that he's like, I'm not as much worried about where this money is going to come from, where the resources are coming from, but I'm worried about you. Like, that's why I'm going to ask you to give. And I was just like in the room and thankful that as a church, like we care enough about people to say, we don't want you to stay on the sidelines. So sorry to interrupt.
And the last one was serve. And yes, there's absolutely a need. We do need people to serve. But I would add to that and say that, again, it's a huge part of just growing in Christ. I believe you will love this church more. You will have much closer friendships and relationships, and you will grow yourself as a person in your own passion and love for Christ. as you step into serving. So for sure it's a need, but there's a reason that we make that a important part of our discipleship process here, is not because we just have a hole to fill, but it's because there's a greater calling God has for you. And we want everyone to step into that and not miss out. So
yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
That's actually the phrase I was thinking about. The challenge that is the foundation beneath and over top of all of those 3 next steps would just be don't miss out.
Yeah.
Like take one of these, like do one of them wherever you're at.
Yep.
Don't miss out. So it's funny you said that.
Yeah.
Praise.
Fight a friend, give, serve, do all those things. But it's been great. It's great to be back.
Really good.
Next week, we start in the Rise Up series with 1 Peter. So excited for Beyond the Message, being back for that. Thanks, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in to Beyond the Message. Before you go, please go ahead and subscribe and like so that you don't miss out next week. As we start our 1 Peter series, Rise Up, and that you won't miss any week after that. But all week long, we have content for you, whether it's on our YouTube channel, on our website, or on our app, CCC app. So check out content there so that you can grow where you're at all week long. We'll see you next time.